In the days following Diana's funeral, on September 6, 1997, decisions were made regarding her jewelry collection within private chambers, where such matters had always been handled. Velvet-lined cases held pieces that would need legal classification before they could move forward through inheritance. Royal collection protocols reportedly govern the handling of items accumulated over 16 years of royal life. Sapphires refracted against black velvet. Emerald clasps carried the weight of years compressed into uncertain futures. No photographer recorded these institutional music processes. No official statements explained what protocols required in such circumstances. The pieces existed in legal categories, not scattered, but awaiting determination. What followed would be redistribution according to established procedures, though the emotional timing remained charged. Public mourning continued in newsprint and television broadcasts. But inside royal households, inheritance protocols had already begun their quiet work. Some legacies are claimed before wills are probated, before sons reach majority, before the world stops counting flowers at palace gates. Please do me a massive favor and subscribe if you want the documented archive behind royal jewelry inheritance decisions and other interesting jewelry stories. Following her July 1981 wedding, Diana Spencer's personal jewelry collection began with gifts that arrived from every corner of the Commonwealth and beyond. Arab states sent sapphires set in platinum. The Sultan of Oman sent an entire suite of diamonds and sapphires. The royal inventory documented each piece under two categories: property of Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, and on loan from the Crown Estate. The distinction would matter later, though no one articulated this at the time. Diana herself preferred pieces with emotional resonance over ceremonial weight. Jewelers who worked with her pieces noted that she often requested modifications to make heirlooms feel personal, for example, shortening chains, resetting stones, and adding modern clasps to Victorian designs. The Spencer tiara, inherited from her own family, appeared in official portraits, but technically remained Spencer property, never transferred to royal ownership. Museum conservators examining these photographs decades later could identify which pieces carried royal provenance and which belonged to the woman, not the institution. Two categories, two futures. When Diana died on August 31, 1997, the Royal Collection Trust faced protocols designed for gradual, orderly transitions, not sudden public tragedy. Prince William was 15. Prince Harry was 12. Under British law, both were legal heirs to their mother's personal property, but Queen Elizabeth II assumed trusteeship until William reached majority at 21. Royal household protocols outlined the framework. Items classified as crown property would return to royal vaults immediately, and personal property would be held in trust for the princes. The distinction between the two categories had never been rigorously maintained during Diana's lifetime. Pieces moved between classifications based on usage and occasion, not legal title. Now in death, every bracelet, every tiara, every pearl strand required categorical certainty. Royal archivists worked through inventories, cross-referencing records against photographic documentation. Some pieces appeared in portraits, but had no corresponding provenance entry. Others carried detailed acquisition notes, but had never been photographed. The law was clear in principle, the practice less so. In the period immediately following the funeral, authorized staff handled the transfer of selected items from Kensington Palace to Buckingham Palace's secure vault according to established royal procedures. No public announcement accompanied this movement. Royal protocol dictated that such transfers required no explanation, no press release, no accounting beyond internal ledgers. Witnesses bound by institutional discretion left no public testimony, but inventory records from that period indicate specific pieces were documented and relocated. The sapphire engagement ring, 18 karat of Ceylon blue, set by Guard in 1981, was placed in protective storage, its provenance carefully maintained. The emerald choker Diana had famously worn as a headband during a 1983 Australia tour event was logged and secured. A pearl suite believed to be from an official visit to Japan received similar handling. Each piece carried dual significance, monetary value, and symbolic weight. The decisions made in those early days operated in the space between legal obligation and emotional necessity. Royal household staff worked in secured rooms while London mourned. Museum quality procedures govern gemstones that would not appear in public view for over a decade. Before the initial mourning period ended, administrative decisions were made. The sapphire engagement ring posed a problem that transcended inheritance law or monetary appraisal. It had become through 16 years of photographs and public appearances, perhaps the most recognizable piece of jewelry in modern history. The 18-carat oval Ceylon sapphire, surrounded by 14 solitaire diamonds, and set in white gold by guard-carried symbolic weight, no archive entry could quantify. Diana had selected it herself from the Royal Jewelers collection in 1981. A breach of protocol that endeared her to a public hungry for accessible royalty. Every state portrait, every magazine cover, every documentary frame had trained millions of eyes on that specific arrangement of stone and metal. When William chose it for Catherine Middleton in 2010, palace officials confirmed what royal observers had long suspected. Camilla had never received it, never worn it, never possessed it, even temporarily. The ring passed directly from vault to son to daughter-in-law, skipping an entire generation of royal consorts. Archival photographs from 1998 to 2005 show Camilla in carefully neutral jewelry, pieces borrowed from the Queen Mother's collection, royal loans with no personal history, designs chosen specifically for their lack of association. One ring, one untouchable symbol. What Camilla did receive has required historical detective work, piecing together photographic evidence and occasional palace confirmations. In photographs from the late 1990s, she appeared wearing pearl jewelry that some sources suggest may have come from royal collections. Specific provenance for many pieces remains undocumented in public records. The diamond Prince of Wales feathers brooch, a traditional royal loan piece, appeared occasionally at formal events. The pattern reveals careful curation. No public announcement accompanied any apparent transfer, and no formal documentation entered public record. The palace maintained complete silence on the movement of Diana's jewelry, treating it as internal housekeeping rather than historical redistribution. Royal protocol permitted this discretion. Jewels, unlike property or titles, required no public accounting. Comparisons to precedent proved difficult. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, her jewelry was publicly catalogued and distributed among family members with documented transparency. Diana's collection occupied different territory: grief too recent, public sentiment too volatile, symbolic associations too charged. She wore what caused no questions. Between 1997 and 2005, no official palace statement addressed the disposition of Diana's jewelry. Media speculation filled this vacuum with rumors, alleged sightings, and anonymous source claims that ranged from plausible to fantastical. Against this noise, archival documentation remained stubbornly quiet. Royal jewels under centuries-old protocol exist in a legal category that exempts them from public disclosure requirements. The Crown owns what it claims to own, and personal property transfers within the family follow internal mechanisms that need not be explained to Parliament or press. When Queen Mary redistributed jewelry in her will, the details emerged gradually through decades of royal appearances and occasional auction catalogues. The Queen Mother's collection, unusually, received comprehensive public documentation, perhaps because her death occurred in an era of greater transparency, or perhaps because her jewels carried less emotional volatility. Diana's pieces existed in a different historical moment. The public wanted accounting. Protocol offered silence. That silence itself became an inheritance, a void that shaped how subsequent generations would approach, display, and discuss every sapphire and pearl that had once touched her skin. Silence became its own inheritance. When William turned 21 on June 21, 2003, formal legal transfer of Diana's personal jewelry collection moved from royal trusteeship into the prince's direct ownership. Palace officials confirmed the milestone with minimal fanfare, noting only that personal effects had been distributed according music to established legal frameworks. What followed was a documented division of the collection between the brothers, conducted privately but traceable through subsequent public appearances. Harry later revealed in a 2017 interview that he offered William first choice of their mother's engagement ring. Knowing his brother was closer to proposing to Catherine Middleton, William accepted. The gesture illustrated a pattern visible throughout the redistribution process, Emotional significance trumped monetary value. Pieces were not divided by appraisal price or carat weight, but by memory and meaning. A bracelet Diana wore during a specific childhood memory went to one son. Earrings from a documented family holiday went to the other. Museum curators studying the eventual public reappearance of these pieces noted that the brothers chose items tied to personal recollection rather than state akasi. On's intimacy over spectacle. They chose meaning over symmetry. Camilla's approach to jewelry, documented through 2 decades of photographs and rare palace confirmations, reveals a strategy of deliberate absence. She has never been photographed wearing Diana's signature pieces. Not the sapphire suite, not the pearl chokers with personal provenance, not the emerald collection, not any item strongly associated with the previous Princess of Wales through media repetition. When she married Charles in 2005, her wedding jewelry came entirely from Queen Elizabeth II's family collection. Pieces with neutral historical associations. Loans from the monarch's personal vault that carried no emotional charge beyond traditional royal provenance. This was not accident, but political survival instinct, operating at the level of symbolic communication. Royal experts noted the pattern, and in royal circles, what one chooses not to wear speaks as clearly as what one displays. Museum analogies apply. Some exhibits remain in permanent storage, not because they lack value, but because their display would create more meaning than their contents justify. Visibility in certain contexts equals violation. Camilla understood this calculus for nearly 2 decades. She navigated royal jewelry protocols by embracing restraint, choosing neutrality over splendor when both were available. Visibility would have been violence. During the 2010s, the Royal Collection Trust expanded its public cataloging efforts, digitizing inventory records and cross-referencing historical photographs with vault holdings. Diana's jewelry appeared in these records with deliberate vagueness. Pieces were documented as existing, but their location remained classified as private family possession rather than specific palace vaults or individual owners. Estimates varied, but archivists believed approximately 25 to 40 significant pieces remained in royal custody beyond those publicly worn by Catherine or confirmed in William and Harry's possession. The Spencer family reclaimed the Spencer tiara following Diana's death, establishing precedent for distinguishing family heritage from royal loan. But the remaining items existed in a category between legal clarity music and sentimental preservation. Too historically significant for sale, too emotionally charged for public display, too legally complex for simple distribution. Museum professionals familiar with royal collection management noted this phenomenon. Items can be simultaneously documented and disappeared, cataloged yet inaccessible, preserved yet functionally erased from active historical narrative. A collection divided by silence, not sale. Catherine wore Diana's jewelry publicly, including sapphire and diamond earrings during royal visits in the early 200s. Palace officials confirmed such pieces came from Diana's personal collection, using language calibrated for transparency, without excessive detail. Over subsequent years, the pattern continued. A pearl choker appeared at state dinners. Butterfly earrings surfaced at events between 2012 and 2015. Most significantly, Catherine wore a bracelet assembled from 3 individual sapphire pieces that had been dismantled and reconfigured. A choice that honored material provenance while creating a new design, respecting the past while asserting the present. This represented a careful emotional strategy. The jewelry returned to public life, but transformed, recontextualized, attached to a different woman in a different era. Archival notes from palace sources confirmed that this approach had been deliberately chosen to allow Diana's legacy to continue without competing with Catherine's identity. The transfer was mother-in-law to daughter-in-law, skipping the generation that could not comfortably bridge that historical gap. Camilla's documented absence from this narrative was itself a form of presence, strategic invisibility. The jewels found their voice again carefully. No comprehensive public inventory exists of the jewelry decisions made in the immediate aftermath of Diana's death. Freedom of information, requests filed by historians and journalists have been rejected on grounds that royal household internal arrangements fall outside public disclosure requirements. What remains known comes from photographic evidence, pieces documented in Diana's possession that later surfaced on Catherine, items confirmed by palace sources, and jewelry that appeared in estate documentation during legal proceedings. The emerald choker was photographed extensively during the 1980s and the early 1990s, and it was logged in inventory systems through 1997. It has no confirmed public location in recent decades. It exists in archival limbo, documented but disappeared, valuable but invisible, historical yet absent. Similar gaps appear throughout the collection. Diamond pieces mentioned in contemporary accounts have never resurfaced publicly. Pearl strands photographed at specific state events remain unaccounted for in public records. The archive stops where institutional discretion begins, creating a documentary void that future historians will struggle to fill. What can be known with certainty is dwarfed by what remains deliberately unclear. History remembers what photographs captured. The question of what occurred in the days following Diana's death, who decided, and what guided those choices, admits no simple answer. Was it redistribution or preservation, legal right or emotional opportunism? Royal sources emphasized legal frameworks and institutional protocols. Critics pointed to the timing. Jewelry transferred while grief remained raw before wills were probated, while the princes were legally minors. Precedent exists in both directions. When Princess Marina of Greece died in 1968, her jewelry passed immediately to family trusteeship without public controversy. When Princess Alice of Battenberg died in 1969, her minimal jewelry collection transferred to Elizabeth II with formal documentation and public accounting. Each case operated under different circumstances, different eras, and different relationships between public expectation and royal privacy. Documented precedent confirms that jewels held in trust are standard practice, not seizure. Yet timing shapes perception. The gap between funeral and transfer, measured in days, not months, created appearance problems that documentation alone could not resolve. Whether pragmatism or insensitivity depends entirely on which version of inheritance one credits. The answer depends on who holds the velvet box. The Royal Collection's current public catalog lists Diana's jewelry pieces as private loans to family members when they appear at all. No exhibition has displayed her complete collection. The 2017 Kensington Palace exhibition, titled Diana Her Fashion Story, included dresses, photographs, and documented fashion choices, but the jewelry timeline contained conspicuous gaps. What appeared were safe choices. The Spencer tiara in photographs confirmed pieces worn by Catherine, items whose provenance raised no difficult questions. What remained absent were the pieces that would have required institutional explanation, items handled immediately after death, jewelry whose current ownership remains unclear, stones whose symbolic weight exceeds their material value. Documented absence equals documented choice. Museum curators understand this principle. What institutions choose not to display reveals as much as what they frame under glass. The final image in that exhibition showed an empty jewelry case, museum lighting falling across bare velvet, a small placard that read location of original private music family collection. What Camilla did was wait publicly, patiently, music, and without a single sapphire. Royal Collection documentation from the period following Diana's death music contains entries that were logged but never detailed, publicly noted in internal systems, but never explained to music historians. Years later, archival researchers examining available Royal Collection records music found gaps in publicly accessible tracking spaces where specific pieces should appear in chronological records, but instead show only cross-references to private family arrangements. Some inheritances are recorded in binding legal language, witnessed and notarized and filed in perpetuity. Others are remembered through photographs and silences, through what appears on Catherine's wrist during state dinners, through what Camilla conspicuously does not wear. The sapphire engagement ring, when it finally reappeared in November 2010 on Catherine Middleton's hand, caught the same light it had held for decades. Same facets, same refraction, the same specific arrangement of carbon and mineral compressed into symbolic weight. But the story had changed. Same stone, different hands, different meaning. The museum case remains empty where it once rested, velvet indented by years of weight that is no longer there.